You know, I was gonna wash my hair before filming this video. I was gonna take a nice long hot shower, scrub head to toe. And then the clock struck 7 p.m. And then the clock struck 8 p.m. And then the clock struck 9 p.m. And then at around 9:30 p.m., my boyfriend, who's currently living 1,500 miles away from me approximately, told me that he would like to FaceTime. And then I decided, you know what? It. I'm just gonna film the video and then take a shower afterwards, damn it. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 5 of the 2023 Halloween special. If you haven't yet watched the previous 4 episodes of the special, I've linked them right up above. Go check them out. I've had a blast doing them. And today I'm going to be talking about a childhood favorite of mine, a movie that I quite literally grew up with as it came out the year of my birth, 2005, and that film is Monster House. Monster House was directed by Gil Kenan and executively produced by Steven Spielberg, and it stars Steve Buscemi, Mitchell Musso, Sam Lerner, and Spencer Locke. The film takes place in the early 1980s, and it tells the story of these 3 friends who discover that this creepy house in their neighborhood, inhabited by an old man named Nevercracker, just might be possessed with a human soul and actually be alive. And the spirit possessing this house isn't exactly friendly. Now, I mentioned that this film was executively produced by Steven Spielberg, and it shows. It's through his company Amblin Entertainment, and everything about this movie, from the tone, the score, the setting, and the direction, all of it truly has that Spielberg flair to it, even though he didn't direct it. It feels like one of those classic adventure thriller films from Spielberg from the 70s or 80s. Right off the bat, this movie looks incredible. The colors and the visuals and the cinematography is all pitch perfect, and it is extremely creative with some of the shot compositions. They really put a lot of thought into this film that many would just deem a PG-rated early 2000s animated family movie. You see, the main protagonist of the film, DJ, spies on Nevercracker from his bedroom window with a telescope, so there's instantly this theme of voyeurism introduced within the film, and there's many shots throughout the movie that are framed in a way that almost feels like you are spying on the characters. So they really cared about the themes present within the movie and worked it into shot composition and cinematography, and I love it when movies do that. It's just such a good way to weave the narrative themes into the technical aspects of the filmmaking. It is a fantastically directed movie, and apparently this was Gil Kenan's directorial debut. That is honestly unbelievable, because the camera movements in this movie are so good, and the angles that Gil decides to use to flesh out this world, to give it more life, give it more character, and really achieve a very, very well maintained tone of tension throughout this entire movie is unprecedented. In a lot of ways, this is directed like a live action thriller would be directed, but it is an animated film, and combining the direction style of a live action movie with an animated one really worked in this movie's favor. I also quickly want to say that I think it's brilliant that the film opens up on a close-up of a leaf and then follows this leaf all the way to Nevercracker's house, because you think of a leaf and it's something that technically is alive, but when we look at it, we don't really perceive it as a living thing. Sort of like the house in this film. When most people look at this thing, they just see a house. It's an inanimate object, a non-living organism as most people would perceive it. But our characters are aware that there is something else going on with this house, and that while it may not look alive, it actually is. So it was definitely intentional to open the film with the shot of that leaf and to follow it for as long as it did in that gorgeous one take. Also, the look of this house is creepy as hell, man. It still creeps me out to this day as an 18-year-old technically grown-up. It is so well done, and its presence is ever constant in this film, which really helps keep you suspended in that tension. This movie is also surprisingly hilarious. There's like a laugh every few minutes, and every single joke lands. And a lot of that has to go to the characters. These are some extremely well written and very likable and endearing characters, and the vocal performances by each and every cast member really help bring them to life. And I'm saying all this, but really the main thing that I want to hit home about this movie movie for people who haven't seen it and maybe looking at it and see, oh, it's rated PG, it's an animated family film from 2006, okay, so, you know, kids movie, haha, family-friendly movie night. You might want to think again. Yes, the original idea for this movie did go a little darker and a little bit more mature and possibly would have had a PG-13 rating, but the movie we got is still surprisingly messed up. This movie is way darker and way more mature than that PG rating really warrants, and really I think the only reason it got the PG and not the PG-13 was because it decided to not show certain things. It decided to cut just enough to make sure it was PG, but that doesn't change the fact that the ideas and the themes are still present in this film, and they are still just as dark and just as mature as they would have been in a PG-13 or honestly a rated R movie. Look, I grew up with this movie. I watched this movie all the time with my family. It was always one of my favorite films. But looking back on it now, being able to look at my youth sort of objectively for the first time ever, this movie was honestly probably a little traumatizing for a multitude of reasons. One, there's actually some very creepy and unsettling imagery throughout this entire movie, honestly. Like, it really doesn't hold back. You can tell that there is actually a very mature, dark, thrilling film placed within this seemingly family-friendly Halloween thrill fest. Which is why there's some genuinely unsettling imagery in this movie. Unsettling by the standards of any film. And I won't spoil anything just in case you haven't seen this film, because I know that now recently a lot more people are discovering this movie, which I love, but that also tells me that there might be a lot of people watching this video who haven't yet had the pleasure of seeing the film, so I'm not going to spoil anything. But what I will say is one of the most mature aspects of this movie is the backstory of Nevercracker's character. That is some messed up shit, dude, and props to the crew and the cast and everybody who worked on this movie for choosing to keep that in there, because that is a really messed up backstory and really tragic as well. But the film is also absolutely thrilling and impeccably paced. Without credits, this movie is only about an hour and 22 minutes long. That's pretty short for a feature film, and they nailed every scene in the movie. I have never once heard a single person say that they have been bored watching this movie. And I also just want to point out how rare it is that a film like this comes along. There's probably only a handful of them in existence. I mean, this movie is basically a live-action, thrilling horror film with some traumatizing imagery and themes tucked away under the facade of a PG-rated, family-friendly, you know, Halloween kids film. You don't get movies like that a lot. I mean, you can probably list them all off on one hand. You got this film, Nightmare Before Christmas maybe, Coraline, Paranorman, Frankenweenie. It's like, it's these kinds of movies. And honestly, those last three right there probably wouldn't have ever gotten them without this movie coming out first. I mean, this movie walked so that Coraline could run. There is one very glaring plot hole, not really plot hole, but more so just overall issue with the movie that, yes, I have heard people talk about, and yes, I acknowledge is definitely there and very apparent, but I'm not going to downgrade it for it, but I still should mention it. Where the hell are the people in this neighborhood? You do get the sense that this is a newly built neighborhood, and so my defense against this criticism would definitely be, well, maybe there's just not a lot of people living there yet, you know? Maybe DJ and his family and Chowder and, you know, all this cast of characters are just like brand new residents who just moved there because the city just started building this suburb. But then later in the film, on actual Halloween night, you see a bunch of kids trick-or-treating, and it's like, where did they all come from? Did they all walk for miles to get to this newly built suburb that has maybe like, I don't know, 20 houses max to trick-or-treat? I don't know about that. But honestly, the movie is just so well done in so many ways that I literally just, I don't care. I really don't care. You can throw all that out the window as far as I'm concerned. Also, can I just say, at this age, I would have absolutely vibed with Z as a babysitter. She is so cool. DJ really didn't give her enough credit, honestly. I also like how this movie came up with smart ways to have characters make dumb decisions. Because one of the most infuriating things about so many horror films, and yes, I consider this a horror film despite the PG rating, I've already told you that it's a lot more mature than you would think and a lot darker than you think. One of the most infuriating things about horror films is how dumb the characters are, and there's not even really a logical loophole that you could articulate to justify their stupid actions. But this movie actually has some pretty clever ones. You got Bones deciding to walk onto Nevercracker's lawn. The dude is blackout drunk, and he lost his kite in the house when he was a kid. He sort of has a vendetta against Nevercracker. He's blackout drunk, he's pissed, he's angry. He just got kicked out of the house by his girlfriend, so obviously he's gonna be an idiot and walk up to this house and taunt it a little bit. Later, when Chowder is crawling up to the house, it's because he genuinely just doesn't believe DJ at all, because it is a wild thing to pitch to somebody. So Chowder's just crawling, he's just like, oh, innocent childhood prank, I'm just gonna ding-dong ditch the house. That's just something kids did back then. And that's just really smart and honestly very high quality writing, because there's so many horror films that don't even bother to try to justify a character making a stupid decision. They just have them do it because the plot needs to keep plotting. But this team of writers genuinely came up with some very clever and funny ways to get characters to do some not so smart things. Now, I mentioned that they did a great job bringing this house to life, and they did. Before, I was only talking about the look of this house, but now I really want to talk about how they gave this house a soul, how they gave it life, the way that they used the windows and the front porch and the door, and when you actually finally see inside the house, it really feels like a living, breathing thing. They do so many smart things where they manipulate the movements and the way the shingles move or the way the wood moves across the house's upper half. It genuinely is incredible how much life they were able to give to this house, how much soul, and just, I don't know, like when this house made an expression in the movie, it is at risk of being silly because you're watching the product of a team of animators trying to make a house look like a face with actual emotion and expressions. But it didn't go that way at all. It genuinely works so well, and I always took it seriously. This movie also has excellent sound design, which really contributes to the creepy factor of it. The score is great, it's perfectly tense and suspenseful when the film calls for it, and very adventurous and whimsical, and just super fun when the movie calls for that tone as well. Now, I mentioned that Nevercracker's backstory, and the backstory of this house and why it's possessed is extremely tragic, and it is, and the movie does not shy away from that tragedy, because as you move into the second half of this movie, you begin to realize that it actually has a very well-realized and intact emotional core to it. And another thing you wouldn't expect from a movie like this is for it to get an emotional reaction out of you. I know I don't expect that, at least from a movie like this most of the time, but when I watched it today for this review, when I rewatched it today for this video, it genuinely got me to shed actual tears, and it really made me sit back and really just appreciate what a quality film this is, regardless of the PG rating, regardless of the fact that it's animated. None of that matters, because it's just a genuinely great movie with great characters, and it's very well written, and it has clever twists and turns, and it's a very just well fleshed out arc for everybody within the story. Also, the third act and climax of this movie is honestly one of my favorites of all time. I don't even care. I'm just gonna say it. It is, in my opinion, one of the best of all time in any film. And this is definitely in my top 5 animated movies of all time. It is genuinely thrilling. It is non-stop. You are sucked in for the entire duration of it, and it feels like this very cathartic, epic culmination and climax of all the build-up throughout the first 2/3 of the movie, which is what any good third act and climax of any movie should have in store for you, and this film really delivered on that front. It just feels so in the moment and so earned, and as I said, so cathartic. It's just so nice and pleasing. This movie is definitely a crowd pleaser in that way, to be seeing all of this go down, and the build up to it is just perfect. So yeah, guys, Monster House, honestly, I would say it has Zootopia syndrome, which those two movies are nothing alike. This movie is nothing like Zootopia and vice versa, but they do have one thing in common, and that technically it is a film that families can watch together, and technically it's a film that kids can watch and enjoy and be entertained by, but it really does have a lot of adult humor.
Did you know he was serious?
Oh man, give her back.
Oh, her? You mind?
Oh, come on!
Sick of you.
You
have no respect for women.
What? What does that mean?
That's not the heart. Then what is it? Well, if those are the teeth, and that's the tongue, then that must be the uvula. Oh. So it's a girl house. What? Chadwick, where are your parents?
My dad's at the pharmacy and my mom's at the movies with her personal trainer.
Adult themes and mature things going on under the surface, and sometimes not even under the surface, just blatantly right in front of you, and it would fly over kids' heads, but it does make it very enjoyable, if not even more enjoyable for adults. And of course, for me, finally, technically being an adult at 18 years old, I was able to pick up on every clever thing written within this film, and it's genuinely incredible. So yeah, guys, Monster House was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and I'm so happy to say, after having rewatched it today, that it is still one of my favorite movies, not even just from my childhood, but just in general. I genuinely think it is a very, very good, very thrilling, well-written, and extremely endearing and entertaining movie. I've always loved it, I still love it, and I'm going to give Monster House a 10 out of 10. So yeah, guys, just check it out. This is a movie that anybody can love, no matter what age you are. It has something for every age group, every personality type, just every casual enjoyer of any type of movie. It also may serve as a good gateway horror movie for younger kids. You know, ages 9 to 13, when they can't really watch the more intense stuff yet. This would be a good movie to show them, to sort of bridge the gap between family-friendly entertainment and more intense horror movies. This movie balances it pretty well. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing. This leg always goes numb every time I film.